The restaurant was too quiet for a Thursday evening. Natalie Harcourt noticed that immediately, the kind of quiet that made her hyper-aware of every sound her wheelchair made against the polished marble floor. She had asked for the corner table specifically, away from the center, away from the pitying glances that people thought they were hiding but never actually did. She smoothed the front of her blazer with one hand, the other resting in her lap where it always rested now. 2 years since the accident. 731 days of rebuilding a company from a hospital bed, then a rehabilitation center, then a home office that her assistant had converted into something functional and quietly heartbreaking. Harcourt Digital had not missed a single quarterly target in those 2 years. Natalie had made sure of that. What she had missed were dinners, birthdays, the kind of evenings that didn't have an agenda attached to them. Tonight had an agenda. Her sister Dana had arranged it. Dana, who meant well in the loudest possible way, who had sat across from Natalie at Christmas and said with her big hopeful eyes, "You work too much and you're lonely, Nat, and I'm not going to pretend I don't see it." Natalie had disagreed. Then she had agreed. Then she had spent 3 weeks trying to cancel before something in her, stubbornness or curiosity or just plain exhaustion from fighting everything, had made her stop trying. The man's name was Cole Merritt. Dana had described him as kind, funny, unpretentious. She had not mentioned what he did for a living. Natalie assumed finance, possibly law. The restaurant was expensive enough that it implied a certain kind of date. She ordered sparkling water and checked her phone twice. 7 minutes past 8. She was already calculating how long was polite before she could leave without feeling guilty about it. The door opened. He was tall, which she registered first. Then she registered the rest of him, the clean but clearly worn jacket, the dark jeans, the boots that had seen actual use. His hair was slightly damp at the edges like he had showered in a hurry. He scanned the room with the particular look of someone who was also hoping not to be too visible, and then his eyes landed on her and he crossed the restaurant without hesitation, which she appreciated more than she expected to. "Natalie." He said it like a statement, not a question. Like he was confirming something he'd already decided. "Cole. Sorry I'm late. A truck came in at closing and the owner needed it back tonight." He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down in one motion, comfortable in his body the way people were when they didn't think about how they looked. "Dana didn't tell me this place had a valet. I parked 3 blocks away because I didn't know what they'd do with my truck." Natalie looked at him. "She told me you were in finance." Cole laughed. It was a real laugh, short and unguarded. "She told me you were in marketing." He picked up the menu. "Mechanic," he said. "I own a shop on Carver Street. 6 bays, 8 employees, been there 11 years. CEO, Natalie said. Technology firm. About 400 employees, publicly traded." He didn't flinch. Didn't recalibrate the way people did when the numbers landed. That small but visible shift where their posture changed and their smile got careful. He just nodded and looked back at the menu. Dana's got a real talent for setting people up to have absolutely no idea what they're walking into. "She does," Natalie agreed, and something in her chest released approximately 2 degrees of tension. The waiter appeared. Cole ordered the steak without looking self-conscious about it, asked one question about the preparation, and that was it. No performance. No ordering something smaller than he wanted because the prices were printed without apology on the right side of the menu. Natalie ordered the salmon and watched him from across the table. "Can I ask about the wheelchair?" he said, not dropping his voice the way people did, not tilting his head with the particular angle of performed sensitivity. Direct. Curious. Only if you want to talk about it. "Car accident," she said. 2 years ago. Spinal injury. L1 level. I have partial sensation in my legs but no functional movement." She said it the way she always said it now, clinical, organized, efficient, the version that gave people information without giving them access to the weight of it. Cole nodded. "Does the restaurant work for you okay? The aisles looked tight when I came in." She blinked. In 2 years, in dozens of meals with colleagues and board members and people who had known her before, no one had asked her that. They asked how she was doing. They asked if she needed anything. They did not ask about the aisles. "It's manageable," she said. "The corner table helps." "Good thinking," he said simply, and picked up his water glass. Dinner arrived and they ate and talked, and Natalie found herself doing something she hadn't done in longer than she could accurately account for. She lost track of time. Not in the dissociative way she sometimes did during late nights at the office when exhaustion blurred the hours together, but in the way that happened when a conversation was actually going somewhere. Cole talked about his shop with the kind of quiet pride that didn't need validation from the listener. He'd bought out his employer at 31, rebuilt the business model, hired young mechanics from the vocational school 2 miles away, kept his prices fair in a neighborhood that was starting to get expensive around him. He said this last part without bitterness, just observation. "You're proud of the loyalty," Natalie said. "The loyalty's the whole point," he said. "Anyone can fix a car. I want people to drive away feeling like someone actually looked at their problem." She thought about that. 400 employees, quarterly calls with shareholders, projections and margins, and the machinery of a company that had not stopped moving because she had refused to let it stop. She was proud of that too, but she had not thought about it in those terms in a long time. Whether people were driving away feeling like someone had looked at their problem. "What made you agree to tonight?" he asked. "Dana said you'd been saying no for months." Natalie set down her fork, considered the question honestly instead of reflexively. "I got tired," she said finally, "of controlling every variable. I'm very good at it. The company runs because I'm good at it. But I got tired." Cole was quiet for a moment. Not the silence of someone waiting to speak, the silence of someone actually listening. "I had a year like that," he said. "After my divorce. I worked every hour the shop was open and then I went home and worked more. I told myself it was productive." He looked at her. It was just loud. Natalie looked back at him. "Yes," she said. "That's exactly what it is." The dessert menu came and they both declined it and neither of them moved to leave. The restaurant had filled and emptied around them, the Thursday quiet cycling back through a dinner rush and out the other side, and they were still at the corner table. "This wasn't what I expected," Natalie said. "Me either." He didn't elaborate and she didn't need him to. The waiter brought the check. Cole reached for it. Natalie reached for it at the same moment, and they both stopped, and he smiled. A different smile than the first one, slower, less surprised at itself. "Split it," he said. "Or I can, and you get it next time if there is one." Next time. The words sat in the space between them without pressure. An option, not a claim. "Split it," she said. And then, before she could decide against it, there'll be a next time. He paid his half. She paid hers. The waiter thanked them and disappeared. Cole stood and put on his jacket and looked at her with the same directness he'd had at the beginning, uncomplicated by the evening or what it might mean. "I'm parked 3 blocks north. You have a car coming." "I have a car," she said. "I drive." He raised an eyebrow, genuinely interested rather than performatively surprised. "Hand controls." "Custom setup. I had a guy design the system." "Good guy." She smiled. The first real one of the evening, unplanned and unrehearsed, the kind she hadn't felt arrive on its own in longer than she wanted to count. "Very good." Cole walked her to the door of the restaurant and held it open, not with the anxious helpfulness people sometimes used around her wheelchair, the hovering over assistance that was really about their own discomfort, but simply the way you held a door for someone you were at the end of an evening with. She went through. The night air was cool. "Drive safe," he said. "You too," she said. 3 blocks. He laughed again, that same short, real laugh, and lifted one hand in a wave, and walked north on the sidewalk with his hands in his pockets and no performance in his posture whatsoever. Natalie sat in the cool air for a moment before calling her car. She was still smiling. Natalie did not tell anyone about the smile. Not Dana, who called the next morning at 9 with barely concealed excitement in her voice and asked how it went. Natalie said fine, which was true, and Dana said fine like what does fine mean, and Natalie said it means fine, Dana, and changed the subject to a board meeting she needed to prepare for. Dana knew she was being redirected. She let it happen, which meant she understood something had shifted and was smart enough not to push it into the light before it was ready. Natalie spent Saturday in the office, which was not unusual. She reviewed 3 contracts, approved a product roadmap revision, and had a 40-minute call with their head of engineering about a server migration that was running behind schedule. She was precise and focused and completely present in every conversation. And underneath all of it, in the part of her mind that ran parallel to everything else, she kept returning to a single sentence. Anyone can fix a car. I want people to drive away feeling like someone actually looked at their problem. She didn't know why it stayed with her. She had heard sharper things said in boardrooms. She had built an entire company philosophy around user experience language that said essentially the same thing in more sophisticated terminology. But there was something about the way Cole had said it, without presentation, without awareness that it was a good line, that made it feel like it came from somewhere real rather than somewhere constructed. She closed her laptop at 7 and sat in the quiet of her office for a moment before calling her driver. She did not call Cole. She had his number. Dana had sent it the morning after the dinner along with a string of emojis that Natalie had not responded to. The number sat in her phone like a small, patient fact. She was aware of it the way you were aware of a door you weren't sure you wanted to open yet. Not afraid of it, just not ready to know what was on the other side. On Tuesday, he texted her first. Just one line. There's a taco place on Meridian that doesn't require a reservation or a jacket. Interested? She read it twice. Then she typed back. When? Thursday, he said. 7. I'll send the address. She told herself it was casual. Two people who had met under unusual circumstances and were simply seeing whether the conversation had anywhere else to go. She did not tell Dana. She wore the grey wrap dress she wore to internal meetings when she wanted to feel capable without looking like she was trying to look capable, and she told herself she was not dressing for anyone. The taco place on Meridian was exactly what he had said it was. Small, loud, no tablecloths, the kind of lighting that came from bare bulbs strung between exposed pipes. Cole was already there when she arrived, at a table near the side wall that had more space than the others. She noticed he had picked it deliberately, though he said nothing about it. He was wearing a dark green Henley and looked like he had come from a shop, which she discovered when she asked and he confirmed. He'd had a late job. He'd made it work. They ordered at the counter. Cole carried both trays without asking, and she didn't comment on it because it wasn't offered as help. It was just the most practical solution to both trays needing to arrive at the same table. How was the board meeting? He asked. She looked up from unwrapping her food. I didn't tell you about a board meeting. You mentioned it on the phone when Dana called you Saturday morning, he said. You redirected her with it. I'm guessing it went fine since you're here and not visibly in crisis. Natalie stared at him. You noticed that from one end of a conversation. I was paying attention, he said, without apology. He bit into his taco. The board meeting had, in fact, gone fine. She told him so. Then, because the food was good and the noise level made honesty easier than quiet restaurants did, she told him that fine was the ceiling lately. That the company was performing well, but she'd been feeling for several months like she was steering something rather than building something, and she didn't know yet what to do with that distinction. Cole listened without rushing her toward a conclusion. When she finished, he said, Is it the company that's changed, or is it you? I don't know, she said. Probably both. That's an honest answer. I'm very good at honest answers, she said. I'm less good at knowing what to do with them. He nodded. Same thing happened to me about 4 years into the shop. I'd built everything I said I was going to build, and then I was just running it. Took me a while to figure out that running it well wasn't the same as having a reason to run it. What did you do? Started the apprenticeship program, he said. Brought in kids from the vocational school. Some of them had never held a wrench before. It was inefficient as hell for the first year. He paused. It also saved the whole thing for me. Reminded me why I built it. Natalie was quiet for a moment. She thought about Harcourt Digital's mentorship initiative, which existed in the company's social responsibility documentation and had a budget and a coordinator and quarterly reports. She thought about the last time she had personally been in a room with someone early in their career and actually looked at their problem. She couldn't remember. They stayed until the taco place started stacking chairs around the perimeter, which was how they realized it was nearly 11. Cole looked at his phone and said something under his breath that made her laugh. They finished the last of the food and he walked with her to her car, not escorting, just walking, and stood on the sidewalk while she transferred into the driver's seat with the practiced efficiency she had developed over 22 months of making the process unremarkable. He watched without looking away and without the visible tension people had when they didn't know whether to offer help or pretend not to notice. You don't look away, she said, when she was settled. Should I? Most people do. They think it's polite. Cole leaned against the doorframe of the car, not close, just easy. Seems like the less polite thing, actually. Like pretending you're not there. Natalie looked at him for a moment in the way she rarely looked at people, without calculation, without preparing the next thing she was going to say. Just looking. He had a face that didn't perform ease. It actually had it. She found that almost impossible to understand and completely impossible to look away from. Same time next week, he said. I have a conference in Seattle next week. Week after. Yes, she said. Week after. He stepped back from the car and put his hands in his pockets. Be good in Seattle. I'm always good in Seattle, she said. I'm always good everywhere. That's my primary problem. He laughed, and she had started to understand that his laugh was not something he performed for social lubrication but something that arrived when something actually landed, which made every instance of it feel like confirmation of something. Good night, Natalie. Good night, Cole. She drove home on streets that were mostly empty and let herself think about it plainly, without the management she usually applied to things that felt significant. It was significant. She didn't know where it was going, and she was someone who needed to know where things were going, who had built an entire professional identity on knowing where things were going. But for the second time since a Thursday dinner at a quiet restaurant, she was sitting with something unresolved and finding that it did not feel like a problem. Her phone lit up when she got home. A text from Cole. There's a farmer's market Saturday on Delancey. No agenda. Coffee and bad decisions about produce. If you want. She sat with the phone in her hand for exactly 4 seconds. What time? She typed back. 9. I'll find a good corner. She plugged her phone in and got ready for bed and lay in the dark for a while, listening to the particular quiet of her apartment, which she had lived in for 2 years and mostly experienced as a working space rather than a place she actually lived. It felt different tonight. Not larger. Just more inhabited, somehow. Like a room that had been aired out. She was asleep by midnight. She had not been asleep by midnight on a weeknight in longer than she could remember.